Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Leadership Speak series at L Forum. As you can see, clearly my participant and I are supporting our club's colors as we have won the IPL. And so it's a very happy day for both of us. So without
fifth time.
Fifth time, yes. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce and welcome Mr. P R Ganapathy, who is the head of the Stanford's Entrepreneur Program in South Asia. He started his career as a task officer and has an excellent story to tell us. So without further ado, Guns, over to you. Tell us your journey as a leader in your professional life.
Hey, thanks. Can I call you Ringo? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ringo. It's a real pleasure to chat with you. It's been a while since we connected. But appreciate the opportunity to chat today. I think I've been one of those people who is still trying to figure out what he wants to be when he grows up, and as a result, I've been trying many different things, and made a lot of mistakes along the way, and happy to share some of those mistakes so that others can go ahead and make their own mistakes and not repeat the ones I did. But I came into the world of business and entrepreneurship by accident. I was all set to join the Air Force, like my father before me, who stood first in the All India merit list for selection for the Air Force in 1954. In 1991, when I wrote the exam, I stood first in the merit list and was all set to join the 150th pilots course and hopefully become a fighter pilot like him. When unfortunately my brother, who had jaundice, was given some wrong medication and went into a hepatic coma and died, leaving me an only son, and my parents kind of talked me out of joining the Air Force, a risky career. And since I'd also got into the IIM Ahmedabad, which is considered one of the better management schools in India, I opted to do that instead. Spent 2 wonderful years in the IIM in the midst of some very bright people, both faculty as well as my classmates. Learned a lot because I came from a military family. The world of business was relatively new to me. I learned a lot from that. Fortunate to get selected into this cadre called the Tata Administrative Service, which is kind of a small elite cadre of managers for the Tata Group. And within that, I opted to go and work at Tata Tea, started on the tea estates, which is where you and I first met, beautiful hills of Munnar, and got bitten by the bug of golf at that time and other things, but also learned a lot. Worked very closely with Mr. R.K. Krishnakumar as his executive assistant, a gentleman who passed away recently and is quite the pillar of the Tata organization, embodying all their values, ethics, integrity, hard work, brilliance, boldness and vision, speed of action, just everything you name it, and he embodied it. And what was the best thing about working with him as his executive assistant was that he gave you almost unfettered access to him, his thinking, his work. And so learned a lot from him. And then, happened to be introduced to Mr. N.R. Narayanmurthy and went to work for him as his executive assistant and the head of corporate planning. So you can imagine that was quite a heady journey. They were just preparing to list on NASDAQ. He took me along with him to do the US roadshow. So we did 26 cities in 22 days on private jets and whatnot, meeting investors, and really had a very successful listing of India's first ADR on a US exchange in March of 99. Moved to the US at that time as the head of investor relations for Infosys and spent many years representing the company on Wall Street. And so got an opportunity to meet with investors, to listen to how they speak about companies like Infosys, how they view the Indian IT services industry. But also in the process, got to see the Infosys management firsthand. So Mr. Murthy himself, Nandan, Chris, Shibu, all of these folks, I took them to meet investors and worked closely with them, saw them in action. Everything that you've read about them, their nerdiness, their obsession with, the data, their integrity, all of those things are true. Brought together a wonderful complementary set of skills, Nandan being the outgoing, gregarious, networked person, Shibu and Chris being just very focused on execution and delivery. Mr. Murthy, of course, being just a visionary, led by example. All of these things,
being the Dhoni of the team, I guess, at this point, being very topical.
True, very true. So it was just wonderful to learn and watch from a lot of these people. Then, did a sales role at Infosys, which I thoroughly enjoyed, selling Infosys BPO. And then living in the Silicon Valley, you get, there's something in the water that infects you sooner or later. It's called the disease of entrepreneurship. So there were 5 of us who left Infosys in 2005 to do a startup, venture funded. Charles River, Maverick Capital, and Helion Venture Capital funded us. I had 2 rounds of funding. Our product was beginning to really catch some traction when the 2008 financial crisis hit, and Lehman Brothers was our biggest customer. So you can imagine that was a tough situation. We tried desperately to pivot. We didn't know that was the term then, but essentially we tried very hard to turn the business in different directions, generate revenue in some way, but finally had to sell the assets in a fire sale in 2010. Those were very difficult times, also times of great learning. We had to, in 2008, cut back significantly on the staff, had to let a lot of people go, both in the US as well as in India. Learned a lot from that process, which we can talk about in due course, about how to do it well, because a lot of those folks are still friends, people who still have a lot of goodwill for us as founders because the way we treated them through that process. And then, of course, in 2010, we shut things down. That time, I could have continued in the US, but, there was something that was, pulling me back to India. I wanted to look after my parents, but also wanted to bring up my son in India. But also I saw that, the Indian entrepreneurial scene was just booming, and there was a lot of opportunity to do interesting things, particularly leveraging the 11 years of very, very useful experience that I had gained living in the US, particularly in the Silicon Valley. And so in 2010, I came back, first ran a small business for a cousin of mine, helped him stabilize that, and then find somebody to run it. But more importantly, at that time, through a conversation with a couple of friends of mine, they said, hey, the Infosys stock options have created enough of a nest egg for you that you really don't need to work for a living. So why don't you use your experience to, create some broader good? And so I helped Teach for India set up their Chennai operations, but also began to interact with some social entrepreneurs. There was a young girl who was creating a rural BPO. So for me, it was very similar to the sort of business that I'd seen at Infosys BPO, but at the same time, it was having this tremendous impact because the sorts of people it was employing in the villages. And so I really, discovered this animal called the social enterprise, for-profit social enterprise. Those, businesses that are structured like a for-profit, but at the same time, at their heart, they have a mission. And the last 10, 12 years of my life have been, involved with funding, mentoring, and really helping these enterprises grow. And truly, Ringo, it's been the most satisfying part of my career. Just very, very exciting to see. We've reached a point in our economy, when you and I were graduating out of college, jobs are not easy to get. You took the first job you got, you put your head down, you worked hard, and you were grateful for a paycheck at the end of the month. But I think now the Indian economy is booming, and kids have so many opportunities that they have the courage to be able to take a risk, a chance with their careers. And young kids are going out and doing game-changing things, really trying to solve social problems. And it's been a deeply satisfying experience trying to support them. So about 7 years, I did that for a nonprofit called Will Grow as their president, and also with the founder of Will Grow and another colleague, we raised a small social impact venture capital fund called the Mentera Social Impact Fund. And about 4.5 years ago, I had the opportunity to lead Stanford's entrepreneur work in India, and that's been very satisfying. We work with about 400 entrepreneurs across India, Pakistan, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and the Maldives. And it's just fascinating to see Stanford curriculum and content help these entrepreneurs really build a solid base for their business, to grow their businesses, and therefore to create jobs, create impact, and create scale. So it's really been quite an amazing trip. So that's kind of been my journey. I'm sorry this answer may have taken longer than you wanted, but
not at all, not at all.
Happy to let you lead me, into which pieces you'd like me to dive into more. So.
No, I think having known you personally for now close to 3 decades, I would say. I did not know some of the details you just now shared with me. I think we never dive into these conversations of such depth. So I am equally fascinated as my audiences will be when they hear your journey, Guns, because I've always knew that you were an amazing professional and you've had a very, very interesting journey. And I believe that you managed to use and leverage every piece of knowledge that you picked up and used it to good use, put it to good use. And I remember your times when we were in New York and you're trying to do your best to revive the 2008 crisis. So we've had conversations, but never to this depth. So I think your journey kind of summarizes what I'm trying to do with this whole entrepreneurial leadership forum. And I think I must say a few words about what I'm trying to do here. Post my doctoral journey, I want to stay close to the world of research and academia, but being what they call a scholar practitioner. I still have my foot in my corporate. I still wear the hat of CEO of Umobi, but I also wish to participate and contribute in my own small way in the world of entrepreneurship. So, and I believe entrepreneurial leadership is a nuanced leadership which is very unique. And you made a very good point that kids of today have the option of trying to take those chances, and maybe in our own lifetime we'll probably see entrepreneurship being a discipline in itself and a work stream like many other professions. So absolutely, and whatever little we have learned, I would like to give back to the society to see if they can benefit. So your story is immensely intriguing and fascinating, to say the least. And I think I've got one of the right persons to talk about today's topic, which is how do you make empowerment a competitive advantage in an entrepreneurial organization? Yeah. So what is your definition of empowerment with regards to an entrepreneurial organization, Guns?
Yeah, so, at Stanford, we like to talk about this concept of heroic versus post-heroic leadership, right? So, the heroic leader is the person who shows up on Monday morning with his cape and everybody comes to him or her with their problems, and this heroic leader kind of hands out solutions. Go do this, go speak to this person, or, here's the answer to this problem. And goes home at the end of the day deeply satisfied. And man, I've had a really productive day. I've solved so many problems. I'm really valuable to the organization. Without realizing that every time you hand out a solution, every time you put on that cape, every time you solve those problems for your team, you've lost an opportunity in which you created the capability or the confidence or the strength to solve those problems themselves. And so what we try and encourage people to do is to start thinking of themselves as post-heroic leaders and to stop being that heroic leader. Because at the end of the day, your organization growth is going to be constrained by your capacity if you're going to be the heroic leader who solves all the problems for the organization. And so we've seen so many organizations in our program that over the years have done a fantastic job getting to maybe $2, $3, $4 million, which in India is 20, 30, 40 crores, nothing to sneeze at, right? Might seem like a small number in the US context, but actually it's a fairly decent sized business in India. And then they're wondering why their growth rates are low and the business isn't growing, and why they're working so hard, but at the same time things aren't happening, and why the team isn't carrying more of a load, and why the team isn't kind of as motivated and fired up and isn't doing as much to grow the organization as they want them to. And we help them realize that oftentimes that is because they've been this heroic leader. They've been taking all the decisions. They've been wanting to take all the decisions, so much so that the team hasn't developed the capability, that skill, that muscle to be able to take decisions, to be able to take the initiative, to be able to really carry that load that you want them to carry. And so that's empowerment. Empowerment is when you not just delegate, it's not just a question of handing off, but you delegate to somebody after you've invested the time and effort in building their capacity to make that decision confidently. And you've also consciously built into yourself the ability to accept that they will sometimes get it wrong. And you've got to be prepared to support them when they get it wrong, so that that mistake that they make is not a negative experience, is not an experience that gets them back in their shell, but is a learning experience, an experience where they learn that you will forgive mistakes, you will forgive well-meaning mistakes, and they will learn from that experience and go on to not make that mistake again. So that's what empowerment is. So post-heroic leaders really spend a lot of time developing people around them and then delegating to them. And then, you've got now a team that's carrying a lot more of the load and is helping really to grow and execute.
Outstanding. I learned something new today. Heroic and post-heroic. I mean, which is why this journey is so fascinating, Guns. Every day when I meet experts like you, there's something new to learn and something, for us to get fascinated by. In fact, when we were in our doctoral journey, I remember our program director saying that at the end of this whole journey, you realize that you know a little more than nothing. So it kind of underscores that. So that was a very fascinating definition of empowerment, and I kind of resonate with it, because this, we all tend to believe that the world rests on our shoulders, when in fact, you really don't need to do that. You can let go and things will just be fine. Which kind of takes me to the next question. I hope you have some anecdotal stories for us, Guns. Is what do you think are the benefits of empowerment? And do you have any anecdotal stories of how any of your entrepreneurial organizations use it as a competitive advantage?
Yeah, sure. So, we have this, I have this model that, what people are looking for are three things in life, right? And they're looking for purpose. So they want you to give them purpose and meaning. Why is their work meaningful? What is the purpose behind their work? The second is they want you to give them autonomy. You've given me a direction, you've given me purpose. Now give me autonomy to organize myself, organize my work within that broader purpose. To achieve that purpose, let me figure out how to do things. And three, they want opportunities for mastery. They want to become good at what they do, right? So they want opportunities to learn, they want inputs, they want learning, they want knowledge, they want mentoring, so that they become better and better at what they do. And so this is really the power of empowerment, is that your job is to give them purpose, to define really an inspiring vision and mission for the organization, to help people understand where they fit into that jigsaw puzzle, how they're contributing towards that larger purpose of the organization. It's not just making you richer because you're the owner, shareholder, or the founder of the organization, but there's a larger purpose that you're trying to achieve. And then give them that freedom to be able to really do their thing. I feel like when I was an employee, that's what I wanted. I wanted an objective, and then I wanted to be left reasonably free to achieve that objective. It's a little like the army, the brigade commander gives the battalion commander an objective, and he says, capture that hill. And then he leaves it to him to decide how to marshal his troops, the equipment that he has, his mortar battery or his machine guns. He is free to organize his as long as that objective is met. And so that's the way in which I see it being done. For me, you were asking about an objective. One of the most satisfying things I've done, Rico, is years ago in a conversation, with my father, who was on the local governor's, Veterans Welfare Committee. We realized that there's a lot of money raised in the name of veterans, which is not spent on veteran welfare, because they design these schemes and the veterans don't know these schemes exist or how to apply for benefit from these schemes. And so I began exploring, is this problem more prevalent than just in veterans' welfare? And I found that the Indian government actually spends, hundreds of millions of dollars on, welfare for specific targeted communities. They do it through schemes. There are maybe in every given state about 1,000, 1,500 schemes. And if you ask a poor person, they'd know maybe the top 4 or 5 schemes, but they wouldn't know a lot of detailed schemes that exist: a scholarship for their child, a pension for their parent, health insurance for their family, a subsidy for buying a water pump, all sorts of things exist. So I came up with this idea that we can digitize some of this stuff. We can create an army of people in the villages that are armed with a mobile phone. And mobile phone penetration now is just gone through the roof in India. And we can create this army of what we call haq darshaks, which in Hindi means somebody who shows you your entitlements. But I had a full-time job. And I was also, in my late 40s. I didn't know if I had the energy to do this. And so I put a call for co-founders. About 51 people wrote into me. And, people with incredible profile, 25, 30 years in microfinance. But it was this young former Teach for India fellow, Aniket Dogar, who wrote in. And he said, I tried to do the same thing in a non-profit model in Delhi. I helped 2,500 citizens, but because it was a grant-based model, we kind of ran out of money. He came to meet me, and within the first 15 minutes, we just hit it off. And I said, Aniket, I will fund this, and I will raise money through my friends and family, but I want you to take this ball and run with it. And, a lot of angel investors find somebody to run it, but that's in name only, and they micromanage the operations like crazy. Whereas I just gave Aniket the ball, and man, ideas are cheap, execution is everything. Aniket has executed so well that we just recently have reached a point where about 3 million families have got 5,000 crores in government benefits as a result of that organization. 5,000 crores.
Outstanding.
And it's a 30 crore company. It had a revenue of 30 crores. So it's the social enterprise mantra of financial sustainability through a revenue model. We've also been able to achieve that. And now we're aiming for, how can, instead of 3 million families, how can we do 100 million families? So we're really scaling things up. It is just fascinating to see how he's executed. And so that for me is exhibit A of empowerment. You had somebody, you gave them purpose, you gave them the autonomy, and that person has just executed so incredibly well, created so much impact, and created such an impact for the organization that it's just a delight to see. So that's my anecdote.
Outstanding. I mean, you're giving me goosebumps, just hearing the story that you just said. Because there is so much to be done, and there are so many who need help. So I think I salute you and your team, Guns, for this outstanding work. I wish you all success and many more successes. And I do hope you reach maybe 500 million families someday. So God bless and all power to you. So, of course, there's always two sides to a coin. So being the devil's advocate, do you see any challenges to empowerment in the journey?
Obviously, empowerment needs to be built on trust, right? And now, empowerment also needs to be built on some degree of matching of wavelengths. So there is a process by which you empower somebody gradually. So various things need to happen over time, which allow you to build trust and to sync up the wavelength. And so one of the things that I recommend to entrepreneurs to do is, you have been a heroic leader all along. Now you've decided I'm going to be post-heroic. It doesn't mean that you don't show up for work on Monday morning and just tell people, hey, take whatever decisions you want. I'm now a post-heroic leader, right? It doesn't work that way. So what you want to do is do this gradually. So what I tell them is, in the first few weeks, whenever anybody comes to you with a problem, don't give them the answer first. Ask them, what do you think we should do? And listen to their suggestions. and discuss that, and you'll find that gradually in the first few weeks, you're getting to a point where 80% of the time their suggestion is what you would have done the first place. And so all you do is, hey, that's a great suggestion, go ahead and do it. And that gives a person a lot of confidence. 20% of the time where there's a difference of opinion, have that discussion. You may change your point of view sometime, but at least they understand your thinking, and gradually both the wavelengths will begin to achieve the same kind of link up. You're both in sync, right? And so then once you get to that point, 80% of the time you can tell them, hey, take the decision because I know you're going to get it right anyway. If you're in doubt, come to me. But most of the time, if you feel like, you've got a hand on it, go ahead and take the decision. That's the time you've got to be prepared for maybe a few mistakes to be made. Make sure none of the decisions that you're leaving to them are the sorts of decisions that can wreck the organization, right? Obviously, retain those with yourself. But gradually over time, within a month and a half, you're going to find a situation where, their decision-making is as good as yours because you've made the effort in really building those capabilities and building that muscle. So that's the downside. If you do it too quickly, if you rush into it, if you don't build the right sort of skills, if you don't share your own thinking, they're going to take decisions that may be different from yours. And that may hurt the organization, that you may react poorly to that, and you may cause an adverse reaction that will not just get you back to square one, but maybe to -1, right? The other thing is you could get taken for a ride. And, so there are people who may not have the same noble intentions. And, if you trust them blindly, they may, do things that hurt the organization, hurt you. So it's a question of also having checks and balances and being prepared to move very quickly if, somebody is violating the trust or the values of the organization that hopefully you've established and articulated before, among the team. And so, things are very clear about how one should work. And so, hiring your family members when they may not be the most qualified for a job, or not declaring your conflicts of interest, these are no-nos. And so establishing those things prevents that. But sometimes, you could have somebody who's a bad actor. And be prepared to take action to show that you're living by your values. Be prepared to take those tough calls.
I mean, that's absolutely spot on, Guns. And I think you made a very good point when you said you let go, but you don't really let go too much that it hurts you. I know you've given us a lot of nuggets to pick from your conversation, but if you were to summarize it and kind of give us a capsule of, let's say, hey, these are some things you would want to be careful when you go on the journey of empowerment, because we all know empowerment intuitively is the right way to do it. I don't know if all of us have the right formula to do how empowerment is optimized. So what would your advice be, Guns, to young entrepreneurs? And I know you're already advising a lot of them. And, even otherwise, people who are on corporate journeys, who are corporate leaders. What would your advice be with regards to empowerment, and how do you harness the power of it?
Yeah, I think, one thing is you have to recognize that, and my answer perhaps comes from my familiarity with the Indian context, where we've had an incredibly booming economy with inadequate investment in developing managerial talent. And so, people moved up from being frontline workers to being supervisors to being managers without anybody investing just purely because there's a certain vacuum. The organization grew, and whoever was around the longest time got promoted. But the skill sets need to change from when you were an individual contributor on the front line to when you're a supervisor to when you're a manager. And very few organizations make the effort really in investing the time and effort in building those capabilities. So you are not going to find brilliant managerial talent within the ranks, a natural manager. You're going to have to make the effort really in developing them. And that is the most productive use of your time as a leader, is really, hiring well and then grooming those people, then empowering those people, supporting those people when they make their decisions, when they make their mistakes. And sometimes, managing them out, or, weeding out the bad actors or people who are maybe incapable or unwilling, or sometimes even uninterested in improving and doing what the organization expects of them. So that really, is the one role that a leader in an entrepreneurial organization has to do today. Is just not so much work in the business, which is what a lot of people end up doing, but work on the business, which is mainly people, articulating the vision, the strategy for the organization, over-communicating some of those things so that everybody has a clear understanding what the organization is doing, what the strategy is, why are they doing something and not doing something else, and understand their role in it, and then give them the freedom and the autonomy to really execute within that.
I think that really was very, very succinctly put, Guns. I think, and I resonate with almost all of what you say. Vision is something which is very close to my heart, and my area of interest is visionary leadership, vision and vision alignment. And some of the things we do at L Forum is to try and do these vision studies with entrepreneurial organizations and see how vision is aligned, how leaders align their vision with the rest of the firm. Because it's very intuitive again that if you have not aligned your whole organization with a common vision, we are working at cross purposes sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
So thank you so much for your time, Guns, and I wish we could continue the discussion. And I've already made up my mind. I'm going to call you again for some other discussion in the future, because you bring so much of knowledge and a wealth of experience for us to learn something from you. So thank you for your time. So I wish all of your social enterprises and all your enterprises all success. And thank you for supporting us. And I hope you'll participate more actively in the L Forum events in the future as well.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the conversation. I think your questions really get to the heart of what entrepreneurs need to do to succeed. So kudos to you for putting this together, making all of this effort. And I hope, somebody somewhere can benefit from, our conversation today.
Thank you, Guns. And hope to spend some time soon. Yeah, thank you.
Like, share, and subscribe to the EL Forum channel.